Hello and welcome to the Brit Iron Podcast Week 13 preview episode. I'm your host James, and as ever, I'm joined by Matt and Sam. Now, before we jump into the news, like we always do, I'd like to give a quick shout out to the UKTouchdown.com. It is a great source of signed NFL and college memorabilia for those of you based in the UK. Everything on the website is 100% legit, all fully verified, so you know exactly what you're getting for your money. So be sure to go over to UKTouchdown.com and check it out. Right, boys, very quick news piece this week before we get into the preview. And there's a few more postponements knocking around the league due to the Ravens' COVID outbreak. Now, the Steelers against the Ravens meant to be on Thanksgiving. It is now scheduled to be tomorrow night, that being Wednesday the 2nd of December. A day before this podcast comes out, so obviously recording it a day before the game as well, so remember that when we're talking about them later on. It's just a bit of a wild situation right now. Steelers also having games pushed back against Washington this week as well, and then Ravens against the Cowboys being pushed back next week. All in all, just a bit of a mad situation.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I'm almost surprised at this point that the NFL have taken so long before suggesting that maybe they'd use the Week 18. I know that they've said that they really don't want to use the Week 18 thing that they had planned in. But, I mean, at this point, there is someone in all of this is going to get put in a really unpleasant situation of... I mean, the Ravens at this point might have to play 2 games in 5 days without practicing in 10 days or something outrageous, which is just a wild situation. But, hopefully all the games get played.
I'm just surprised as well with the Ravens. They've already, don't know exactly what, but disciplined someone who was at fault within that organisation. So we already know it's not just they've got unlucky or it's out of their hands. It's within someone from that organisation's hands. Someone's at fault for this. Just make them forfeit the game. It's ridiculous. You keep pushing it. You're pushing everyone else's games about. It's not just now Steelers, Ravens, one game. It's Cowboys and Washington getting bought into it and their games getting moved. So then that's affecting their weeks in a division that is all to play for. It's, I don't know. I think the league's doing too much to help out the Ravens. And at this point, you saw some of the Steelers players were fuming. I would be too. Why risk every game? They're risking their bodies, their health, or CT and everything that we know can happen in an instant. Like one massive hit to play as an unbeaten team against what could be basically a practice squad. I don't know. I think it's getting ridiculous personally.
It's quite interesting as well that when this happens to the Ravens and they have a bunch of players that potentially it's very troublesome for them to miss, they postpone games and they make things happen. Yet when the Broncos can't field a quarterback, they don't do anything to help the Broncos out. They basically say, you just got to find someone.
Exactly. So, Broncos, Niners, they've got on the wrong side of it, and the NFL's been, sorry lads.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do seem to be bending over backwards for the Ravens. All round the technicality, I believe it is, as to why they're doing it for the Ravens and not the others. But you're right, it just seems a bit ridiculous that other teams aren't getting the same leeway. And now the Cowboys are being affected, the Steelers are being affected, and the Washington football team are being affected as well. Yeah. Just because this one individual broke protocol, broke rules, or whatever happened down in Baltimore. But yeah, a bit of a mental situation, and just one to watch as the week develops, I think, for all of us. But let's jump straight into the previews. And this week we have 2 teams on a bye. We've got the Panthers and the Buccaneers on a bye this week, so we won't be talking about them in this episode. Right, the first game of the week let's talk about is the Bengals going into Miami to play the Dolphins. I mean, prior to Joe Burrow's injury, this could have been a brilliant game to watch. But now Joe Burrow's out for the season and is going to miss this game. Is it a bit of a nothing game? Do you expect the Dolphins just to walk it?
Yeah, essentially. The Bengals struggled in that game with the Giants. I think they got helped out by the fact that Danny Dimes went out and instantly that team's less efficient. And this Miami team is just rolling. They've got past what could be an in-division trap game with the Jets. You never know. Anytime it's in division against a team that hasn't won all year, you're going to look at it and say, but got through that easily, comfortably. And I expect the same here. I think they'll keep the Bengals to single-digit points. Whoever is in at quarterback will do enough, and they'll move on with a win and keep chasing down these playoff spots and winning that division. Hopefully, if that's what they're going to be aiming for now.
Yeah, I agree with Matt. I mean, okay, Fitzpatrick and the Dolphins, they're coming off of effectively the closest thing you can get to a second bye in the NFL nowadays, which is a game against the Jets, and they didn't look crazy dominant, but I mean they held the Jets to 3 points, couple picks on Sam Darnold, they got the dub. Crucially, there wasn't any Fitzpatrick interceptions, which gives me just more and more confidence going forward that I think he will continue to be the guy, at least until he makes a mistake now at this point. I think they're just going to ride the hot hand and whichever they think gives them the best chance to succeed this year. Really liked Devontae Parker last week. I just think he's so good, and in the Gesicki, the season he's having. Okay, he wasn't a huge factor in last week's game with only 2 receptions, but the touchdown, he just seems to find the end zone, and the fact that I'm saying all these things and positive points on their offense when actually this is a defensive team just gives me so much hope for these guys going into the playoffs that I'm starting to think they're the kind of team that could get an upset win at some point in a wildcard round in the playoffs and suddenly be there in a divisional round a game and everyone's going, oh, the Dolphins are not, I mean, they're nowhere near what we thought they were going to be. And then it's just unfortunate for the Bengals, isn't it, that the Bengals have been landed with the Burrow injury and everything they've got going on there. So no, they probably can't compete, but there are still bright spots. Again, T. Higgins, I had questions last week as to whether he could do it without Burrow, and he did. So there are still bright spots going forward, but this Dolphins team should wrap this up.
Yeah, 100%. Interestingly enough, though, the spread is at minus 10.5 in favour of the Dolphins, which does seem a little high. In my opinion, I'd probably be taking it reluctantly just because it is quite high, but I think there is enough talent in that Dolphins offense to get the job done, and missing Burrow I think is quite big for the Bengals despite all the other key pieces as well on that team. I don't know what you guys think of the spread though.
I'm avoiding that spread. I think the Dolphins win and happily put them in money line. If maybe this was around sort of 6.5 by touchdown, I'd take it. I think there's a high chance they cover, but it's just a little bit of a gamble that when there's uncertainty on the offense, this Dolphins team, at times, you've got 2 quarterbacks that can just throw a few wayward picks, as we've seen. Makes you a little bit hesitant on that one. And if they just decide to grind out a defensive victory, are they going to cover that by 11 or 10.5? I don't know. So I think I'm avoiding that, but I'll definitely be taking a money line.
Interesting. I'm quite comfortable taking them with the spread this week just because of that Dolphins defense. I think this, like the Bengals offensively last week against the Giants really struggled. I mean, 136 yards passing. That is not game breaking. They didn't have a great week rushing the ball. And I think this is a much better defense than the Giants. So I think this is, prop bet wise, I think this is a good week for potential defense special teams touchdown. I think there could be a lot of interceptions in this game. I'd look for 2 interceptions from Brandon Allen at least.
There you go. There's your prop bet for the week, at least. Coming early doors from you there, Sam. But let's move things on and let's talk about the Cleveland Browns going in to play the Titans. I mean, who would have thought this would have been an 8-3 matchup at the start of the year? More so probably for the Browns side of things, if I'm honest. But who goes 9-3 after this game? Who's getting the win here, do you guys reckon?
For me, I mean, probably a shock, but I'm going to set this on the Titans. I think what I've seen, I think there's the ability in Baker to just lose this game for the Browns. I think as much as you can say their defense, it looks great. The run game is, obviously they got, I think, arguably the best pair of running backs in the league on the side for the Browns. But if they can't stop Derrick Henry, they will lose, essentially. And that's what we see from the Titans. And I just get the feeling that they're not going to be able to in this matchup. I think this Titans team, they've had their slump. And I think they come back, massive in-division win against the Colts, comfortable win against the Colts. And I'd say that Colts defense, for me, it's up there. It's on a par. Depends which Sunday you get them on. But this Browns defense, maybe even edging them out slightly. And if they can do that against them, I think they'd do that here. I'm not as sold on the Browns as a contender just yet, just because of that, of what Baker's doing. He, for me, is worrying. Like, if you can shut down this run game, they're done. For me.
See, I don't think it's necessarily shutting down the run game. What we've seen this year and last year especially is the way to beat the Browns is to take what Baker does well, take it away. And what he does well is he does the play action relatively well, and he's actually quite good from a nice, clean, comfortable pocket. When he's not under pressure, he doesn't make as many bad decisions. The teams that beat the Browns, and they beat them comfortably, are the teams with really good pass rushes who can get to Baker, because when when that pocket collapses, he loses his mind and he makes terrible decisions. Now, the Titans, not even just statistically, they've got one of the worst pass rushes in the league. Now, as an all-round defense, they're not terrible, but they've got a bad pass rush, which I think is enough. Along with the Browns' O-line being relatively sturdy and that run game, I think this is enough for the Browns to edge through, just because I'm not sure the Titans are going to have enough to bring the pressure on Baker. That being said, I do think it's a really, really close game, and I'm not touching the spread at all on this at -3.
Yeah, I'm the same as you. I can't put my finger on who's going to win this one. I really hope the Browns don't, as a Ravens fan. Slightly biased, of course, there, because I need us to get back in that division. But my heart says Titans, but my head probably says Browns. And there's always one of these games each week where I just can't figure out, and this is the one for me this week. So I'll also be avoiding it, Sam. You're not alone in that regard. But let's keep things moving, and let's talk about the Jaguars going in to play the Minnesota Vikings at 6 p.m. on Sunday. Now, rumours are that Gardner Minshew is going to be back for this game. Does this make a difference at all? Do you reckon they can get the win if he starts, or is it Vikings lock up?
I mean, the Jags haven't looked like a good team with Gardner Minshew under centre at any point really this season, have they? Bar that week 1 where they came out and they looked okay. I'm not sure that's really going to make much of a difference, is it?
If he's healthy, for me, there was a phase here. We don't know exactly when this injury, I think it was to hand, came about for him, because he looked good to start the season. He looked like he was going to just put this Jags team in games that they shouldn't really have any right being in. And then suddenly it just went. And I think it looked almost, from what we've seen of him at times, a little bit uncharacteristic, although, yeah, it's a smaller sample size of what we know from Minshew. And this Vikings team isn't exactly a great team. It's not exactly one that I think you can confidently say you'd pick over a lot of teams at the moment. I don't know. I think it's going to be a closer game than it should be again. Like, the Jags managed to stay in that game with the Browns. Very nearly took a win over them. So if they can do that, they can stay in one with the Vikings. I think the Vikings get the win here, though, because there's more to play for. Get the win here, go 6-6, roll on to the Bucks. Suddenly, wildcard implications of that game, huge. Yeah. So I think for them, there's just way more to play for.
Cousins has also has quietly put a string of a couple of quite nice games together. I think he's gone for over 300 yards in 2 games on the trot now. And it's not like the Jags defense is the defense that it was 3 or 4 years ago. So I think, like you said, their offense could show up, but I wouldn't back them to win if this turns into a shootout.
No, not at all.
So here's a follow-up question for you guys then. What do you want to see the Jags do in this year's draft? I mean, as it stands, they're going to be one of the, I guess it's a top 5 pick, maybe top 3 pick at the moment. I haven't got the numbers in front of me. What would you like to see them do? Because, of course, they haven't had a history of drafting quarterbacks.
If, let's say, they end up with the first pick, I think you're going to be taking Trevor Lawrence. He looks sort of Andrew Luck-esque coming out, generational. Outside of that, yeah, the quarterbacks look good. But every year there's a group of guys that people go, these quarterbacks are good. These are the next generation of guys. So I think for them, use your high picks. Just try and actually build out this team properly. They've, especially defense side of the ball, they've drafted quite well, albeit there sort of always seems to be a massive fallout when something goes wrong down the line. But they can almost reset another little window that they had. And maybe this time just stay away from trying to draft quarterbacks. See what you've got in Minshew on a full, healthy season. Because I think he's done enough for me when he's been healthy to warrant that. And I think if you can strengthen your defense, really get some pieces there, build from there. You've got 2 guys in Robinson and Minshew. You don't need to pay a lot. Sort of that backfield sorted.
I think it's a similar question to the issues that you've had going on in Washington for the last couple of years, in the sense that the Jags are a franchise that have got much bigger issues than the quarterback. They're not a quarterback away. They've traditionally, over the last 5, 6, 7 years, had a terrible culture in which players want to get out. So you need to fix that, because it's all very well. You can draft amazingly for the next 2 years, and you can put a great defense together like they did in 2017, and then 2 years later everyone's gone because no one wants to play there. So they need to sort their culture out, and then they need to put pieces around that team. I just don't think there's enough pieces that you could go out and you can draft a quarterback high, but if everything around them is awful, you're bottlenecking them. Like, I still don't think Sam Darnold is a bad quarterback in this league. I think he's bottlenecked by having so little talent as a team as a whole and a terrible culture in that building. So I would like to see them, stack up picks, take it where, like Matt said, take best player available, because almost every position you could argue they need someone. I mean, yeah, every position. So take best player available, stack up as many pieces in high round picks as you can for this year's draft, and then see where you are next year. Sort that culture out, because I don't think you're just a quarterback away.
Yeah, and of course GM's just been fired as well in the last few days, so who knows what their plan's going to be, or who is even going to come in to replace the outgoing GM. So moving situation definitely for Jacksonville, but definitely interesting to get your guys' thoughts on the matter. Okay, we've got another 6 p.m. game on Sunday. We have a divisional matchup between the Saints and the Falcons. And the Falcons got a big win last week against the Raiders, which shocked most people around the league, I'd say. Albeit Falcons are still 4-7 and third in that division. But could they do what they did against the Raiders against the Saints, who arguably are a tougher opposition?
I actually think there is a little bit of a chance here for them. I mean, it was a weird game. I think that Saints-Broncos game, it's just an anomaly of a game. But the Broncos don't have an incredible defense right now, and Taysom Hill couldn't really get it done. It looked like a running back who can throw at quarterback, and they lent heavily on Latavius Murray. Had a game and a half, so fair play to him for that. But Kamara hasn't looked the same since Breeze has been out. He's lost all of that receiving threat, which is a massive part of this offense. Whereas the Falcons are coming in looking hot on both sides of the ball off of this game. Who knows? Maybe it's just one of those games where they've played up. The Raiders seem like a bit of an enigma of a team, very hot and cold. But the Falcons have been looking pretty good since all the changes there. And I mean, Matt Ryan feeling himself with the way Calvin Ridley and co are playing. It's going to be a tough game for anyone. I mean, this Saints defense, though, we know it's a monster.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to call the Saints to win this, just because I think that was an anomaly what happened with the Broncos, and they are just the better team. But I will not be at all shocked if the Falcons come out and just smash them in the face early in this first quarter and say, right, let's play some football and get up and get ahead of them. And then suddenly you've got Taysom Hill trying to throw to catch up. And then what are they going to turn to Jameis, who we've seen what happens when he has to make throws in the past, at least. It ain't pretty. So,
but I mean, Taysom Hill, I think there is going to start being questions around him now, because it's one thing to come out and play one good game at quarterback, especially when you've got Sean Payton as your offensive coordinator, and you're in one of the best situations to kind of come out, not have massive amounts of film on you, and just kind of have one game script that is everything that you do perfectly, and he looked really good. Yeah, and then, as Matt said, come out against the Broncos, and it looked like he was really struggling. He looked like a running back playing quarterback. And when you've got a quarterback of the caliber that Winston is behind you, people will start very quickly asking questions. They will start saying, when we come up against a proper team and we need to throw the ball, can Taysom Hill deliver? So I think that this week the Saints do win, but it's completely on their defense. I'm not sold on Taysom Hill after seeing him last week. I've got so many questions, and I'm not sure that in that Saints building that they, at this point, really know who is going to be their quarterback come January.
Yeah, see, for me, it depends on Taysom Hill's ability to bounce back, because, I mean, Denver, they're seventh best against the pass, So it's going to be a hard matchup anyway, because statistically they've been good against the throw and the passing yards and all that. And then Atlanta are second worst in the same category. So if he has the ability to bounce back and mentally recover, then I think the Saints will walk this easily. That pass defense isn't good. Run defense is a bit better, but there's a lot of opportunity for Taysom Hill to have a big day here, and I think he can do it. This is the opportunity for him to do it. He's waited a long time, and this is his moment. So back in Taysom Hill this week.
I think an interesting point Sam Ray says, a little question I want to pitch you guys then. With everything we know right now, let's not assume they win this game, anything like that. Right now, if you had to make a call, who this Saints quarterback is, who's named as the starter heading through into the off-season, out of these three guys that are in that building, out of Breeze, Winston, Taysom Hill, who are you thinking right now are we going to see trotted out there week one? Starting QB.
Oh my God.
On the spot.
That's a tough
I've
one.
got you on the spot here.
I'm not sure, because I know that Sean Payton loves Taysom Hill, and I know that they do have a lot of faith in him in the building, but from what I've seen of these three players and where they're at in their careers and stuff like that, if it was me, I'd be trotting Jameis Winston out there. Week one.
I like what you're saying, but surely they would have used him now already. They wouldn't have benched him for Taysom.
No, because the whole point is they know that you know what you've got with Jameis Winston. He can throw a lot of yards, he can push the ball downfield, and yeah, he's gonna throw some picks, but with good play calling, and you can manipulate that. With Taysom Hill, up until 2 weeks ago, he'd never started a game. So they're trying to get him out there now while they've got the first seed locked up. They've got a relatively easy run of games so they can see what they have in him. Because worst case scenario, he comes out next week, looks terrible, and they lose, at which point they go, right, we go to Jameis, and okay, you're at 9-3.
And at that point, maybe Drew Brees is back, and then you've got the veteran in there, which I think is what I would do personally, is stick with the veteran, stick with Brees until he bows out.
So if Breeze says, I'm sticking around one more year, and he comes back next year, even after the way he's played this year, you would take him for a fresh season?
Yeah, I would.
I think for me, I'm leaning... For me, this actually all rests on Michael Thomas. I think the way I would do it is if he's healthy, if he's going into the season as normal... I mean, no one would have predicted this COVID year, so who knows what next season could look like. Hopefully normal, back to how it should be. Whole time he's healthy, I'm trotting out Breeze, and I'm fine with that as long as he comes back, says right, one more go. I mean, assuming assuming they don't win it this year. Let's say just what we know now of them not having won it yet this year. Who knows? I think Breeze goes out, tries one more season, but if Michael Thomas goes down, pretty much straight away you flip, and at this point I think it would be onto Jameis. I think Taysom Hill, what they're doing now is they're almost putting their money where their mouth is. They said, this is a Steve Young-esque guy. This is the next quarterback. We've paid him all this money because we know what he can be. You've got to play him. You've got to try it. Otherwise, it's always going to be that thing of, but what if? So I think that's what they're doing now. Because to be fair, partly as well, the Bucs have allowed them to. I think this is a different conversation if they're going game for game. They've split the series. I think they're just in a great spot. So they're trying it out, seeing what they've got. But yeah, for me, I think if they don't win the Super Bowl this year, it's Breeze. If he's in that building, he gets out there first. And if not, it's Jameis.
Certainly a wild situation at QB for the Saints. It's a great question there, Matt. A lot of options for them to pick. And if you're listening, put your comments below who you think they should start next year at QB if all three are available. But let's shift things on once more, and let's talk about the Raiders going to play the Jets. I mean, we briefly mentioned it there about what happened to the Raiders last week against the Falcons, but there's a good chance for them to bounce back against this poor Jets team, which I think at the start of the episode, Sam, you mentioned the Jets pretty much being another bye week, and it just seems to be a bounce back week every week for a team in past month or two, I guess. It's just a bad team.
I think I just need to take this moment to apologise to Derek Carr. I think I jinxed him last week. After last week's episode, when I finally came around and said, you know what, he's having a good year. He then puts together one of the worst performances of his career. Was it 3 fumbles? He looked rubbish last week. He really couldn't do anything. Josh Jacobs going down with the dodgy ankle. I believe that has now come out. It's just a sprain. So luckily for him and the Raiders, they're not losing a massive piece. So we need to see Derek Carr bounce back, because that was appalling last week what he did. That was not NFL quarterback worthy. However, he's playing the Jets. The Jets are terrible. They're going 0-16. Raiders, and I'm taking the Raiders at -8.
Yeah, simple as that for me. I'm taking the Raiders. If you want to get right game here, have the Jets. Perfect timing.
Yeah.
And we've seen it from better quarterbacks than Carr. Sometimes you just have a bit of a game where you just have a nightmare. I mean, we've seen it from Russ this season. That game against the Bills, it was every time, it was like, what's going on? But I think he'll get it right. We know Josh Jacobs, it's not as serious as people were worried at first. It's not a massive red flag. I think he should be able to get at least some playing time. They might not roll him out there fully. I think if they get up, why risk it? But yeah, I think the Raiders take this and that -8. I'm happy with that.
Yeah, Sam, maybe you should leave the Derek Carr loving to me. So I've been banging all season, and it's the one time someone else agrees, it's backfired a little bit.
It does tend to be like that, though, doesn't it? You tend to love on players, and I tend to be a bit more critical and a bit harsh. Well, I'm pretty nice about Russell Wilson.
Oh,
everyone else needs to pick up their
Moving on.
Moving on, yep. Raiders -8 seems like quite low, so I'll be taking that as well. And then we'll shift things on to the next game on Sunday, which is the Indianapolis Colts going in to play the Houston Texans. Now, is this another chance for a team to bounce back? Is a chance for the Colts to bounce back after losing to the Titans last week? Or maybe the Texans a better team than their 4-7 record shows?
I think they were. I think they're not this week and for the next 6 weeks. I think Will Fuller is a massive part of this offense. He's been getting it done this year. Maybe now we know why. I mean, obviously we don't know. No one really knows exactly what it's going to be for. It's seen it in all sports. I was recommended something. I took it. Turns out I wasn't allowed to. Fair enough. It can easily happen. It seems to happen often enough that right. But then you got more think about the reality of that now. One, is that his last game in a Texans jersey? Contract up at the end of this year. Going to be interesting to see now. It definitely affects his market, because it's just another season where there's going to be that thing of, he didn't play the full 16 games. Although it's not injury this time. Would he have been injured if it wasn't for... That's going to be the question, is what did he take? Did it stop him getting injured? But this Texans team without him, I mean, Cooks has got to step up. Still's just got released. So it's what Cooks, Cobbs and Kiki Kuti, which now you've gone from what was quite a good receiver core to one that's looking a bit thin. And just another thing for Deshaun Watson to sit there and go, brilliant. Great. Does anyone want to help me win here? Or what are we doing? Whereas the Colts, they need to get this win. I think losing that game to the Titans, that's big for them. For that, what's going on in that division, and they need to get right. And I think they will. I think they just have one of those games where if you come up against Derrick Henry in that mood, you're done. Like a lot of teams, I mean, you're not going to be able to stop it. And I think there's nothing like that now, I think, to worry about on this Texans side. So the Colts can just go out and play their normal football. And doing that, they're the better team and they get the win.
The other thing that I think really messed with the Colts last week is, as Matt said, you came up against Derrick Henry, who just had a Derrick Henry day. He seems to do it about once every 3 weeks. He just has a Derrick Henry day. And the big thing that they really missed was DeForest Buckner. In the middle of that D-line, he has been a rock for them this season. They've been relatively good against the run all year. Then you miss your biggest, strongest, most consistent D tackle, who just holds the middle. And if you look at all of Derrick Henry's runs, they were just pounding where Buckner would be. And that was the Titans game planned perfectly against it. Henry had a brilliant day and the Colts just didn't have an answer. I don't think that's going to be an issue against the Texans. I don't think the Texans have got the personnel to take advantage of that. I don't think they've got the quality of back that you'd really need. And I also don't think that they are as willing to commit to the run to take advantage of it. I mean, Derrick Henry, the Titans are one of the few teams in the league that are willing to turn around and say, we're going to run the ball 50 times. Stop us. Yeah. Other teams, when it gets to 3rd and long, they won't hand off to their running back. They'll throw. And I think the Texans are one of those teams. So Colts very comfortably -3. Still think they're a real contender. Still think they should go on and win that division from where they are now. And I actually really look forward to potentially seeing the Colts and the Titans play again in the playoffs.
definitely. I'll agree.
Yeah.
I'll agree with you on that last part.
Yeah. Yeah, you can definitely see that happening. And I'm glad you brought up the spread as well, -3. Just seems quite low, in my opinion, for this one.
That's
Especially
got to move.
adding on to what you were saying, Matt, as well, about missing the wide receivers. It just seems awfully low. But of course, important to note that these spreads are, I think, the start of the week, isn't it?
Yeah,
so this might have been
is.
before the news came out last night about Will Fuller.
It would have been out.
Very
yeah.
true. Yeah.
So that might have switched a little bit, but I don't imagine it'll be too much from the things I've seen today.
You do also tend to see it. I like to refer to it as just the Deshaun Watson effect. Vegas in general tends to hate giving lines bigger than like minus or like +7 to the Texans because Deshaun Watson is that good. Even with very little around him, I think they still worry that he can pull out some garbage time touchdowns and ruin you on the spread there.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah, for sure. Right, let's talk about the last 6 p.m. game on Sunday. It sees that the Lions go in to play the Chicago Bears. Now, the Bears are finally out of that tough run of games that we spoke about recently. You know, they played the Packers, the Vikings, amongst other teams as well, off the top of my head. But more importantly, the Lions have just fired the head coach and the GM, so both Matt Patricia and Bob Quinn are gone. And we've spoke about this a few times this season where teams fire these key personnel pieces, the head coach or a GM, and you just can't bet on them because you never know what's going to happen. Are we going to see the same again here, especially with the Bears on such a losing streak at the moment?
Yeah, I'm not going near this. I think talk about like you get right games, the game after your coach has been fired, all those kind of things. Stafford on his day, without any of that, can win a game. And this Lions team, we've seen it, they can play up and they can suddenly look a whole different team. So I think if you say, okay, we're going to give him the sort of rub of, all right, one coach out, new era, teams just seem to play better, it'd be hard not to bet on them, especially against a team that hasn't looked great. Started hot, don't look great now. What quarterback, what you're actually going to get from whoever it is that Foles and Trubisky. I don't know. If I have to pick, I'm going to lean on the Bears to come out with this, and just sort of there is enough pieces on that defense to have a day here. Montgomery looked good. Now he seems to be over the sort of little injuries he had going on. Great game from him. And they just need whoever it is at quarterback to not do anything overly stupid too many times. I won't say not do anything stupid at all because it's Trubisky and Foles. They will. But I don't know. I'm not going to bet on it. I'm not going near anything like that. I'm going to predict the Bears. But it could be the Lions. Like, it's just a bit of this is an absolute coin flip of two teams that aren't playing for a ton.
Yeah, I think if it wasn't for the coaching fires, then I would have comfortably said, look, the Bears are going to win this all day. Because yes, the Bears' offense is putrid. I mean, it is awful. It is so bad. It's, I mean, not far off Jets bad at this point.
Say it how you mean it. Jesus.
Yeah, don't mince your words, mate. Go on.
But
say what you see.
But the Lions' defense has been terrible as well. I mean, it's been really bad. And the Lions' offense hasn't been great. The Bears' defense has been pretty good. So, I mean, just do the math. The one good unit in this game is the Bears' defense, so I'll take them on that. But there is, like you said, that coaching factor that sometimes these guys do just come out and play up. And the thing is, the Lions aren't without some talent on both sides of the ball. So if these guys do step up and they do just kind of play up for, even if it's just for one game, then it's very possible that they play just well enough and the Bears' offense is, the Bears' offense, and they sneak out field goal game, and it is. I mean, this is a game I don't want to watch. It's just got boring game written all over
thank
it.
you.
Yeah,
Sorry to any Lions and Bears fans, but
I mean, they'd probably be leaning towards it at this point on this year. I mean, maybe Lions fans are excited to see it, new era, but yeah.
Yeah, it's stereotypical coin flip game. It's just one of those ones you just can't call again. Don't want to go near it, don't want to watch it. Just wish it didn't exist right now. Just let it happen in the background and we'll sort of cover it next week when we have to.
How many red zone highlights do you reckon we actually get from this one? Is this just so they will only show it if they have to?
It'll be the first game that gets kicked off at 6 o'clock. Yeah. You'll see the kickoff, and then it will be the first one in at the thing, and you'll get a quick mention.
Yeah.
The occasional touchdown if they have to show it, if there's not a better one somewhere else, yeah.
safe to say we're not looking forward to this game, which probably means it's going to be the game of the week.
Yes.
We'll regret our words.
50 points apiece, incredible game.
Yeah, always happens every time. Right, let's move things on to the 9:00 games, and we see the Giants go into Seattle to play the Seahawks. Both teams off the back of wins last week, but importantly for the Giants, Danny Jones is going to be out for this game.
Yeah.
But the Seahawks defense is starting to get a little bit better. Statistically, last 3 games they haven't been the worst. I mean, they're still ninth worst or whatever, but they're not the worst. So, with both of those things considered, is this a lock-up for Seattle?
Lock of the week for me. It's an easy
lock.
lock. Well, yeah, I mean, we can all agree on locks. Like, they don't have to be unique, and I think it's an obvious one to go for. I think this is a Giants team that managed to start to figure out a little bit of an identity on that offense. It was almost the way I'd say there's a lot of just sort of option plays, and there was a lot of let Danny Dimes use the legs he's got, and it was like, I'm trying the right way to word this, a beginner's version of the Ravens from last year at points, where it was you didn't quite know what you were going to get, and you always had to be ready for the quarterback to run. The defense started to figure itself out a bit, and I think will continue to do that. But it's not a game you want to be a defense. You're figuring yourself out against the Seahawks. I mean, DK Metcalf, monster game he's just put up, and I mean, we know him or Lockett every time one of them will do it, and I think here that's going to continue. I think the Seahawks move on through. I think I'll take him on this spread of -7. I mean, if that moves much, if all the way up to double figures, I'll be taking that. If it starts to get towards 10, we don't know how it could move during the week with different bits of news. A little bit hesitant there, but where it is right now, -7, happily take that all week.
I feel really bad for Danny Dimes because, okay, the last couple of weeks and this little stretch of wins that the Giants are putting together, they're against the lower tier NFL teams. But the things that we're wanting to have seen him clear up, like he's not fumbling the ball every 30 seconds like he was like at the start of the season. And okay, he's not playing against the same defense, but like you're seeing that progression, and you're kind of you're seeing enough. And he was getting to the point where, because 4 weeks ago I was about ready to say, look, if we're at that number 1 or number 2 spot, take the quarterback. If you think the guy, you've got to move and go with the guy who's the best to win. But I think Danny Dimes was put himself in a spot that he was working, and he was that argument of, oh, maybe he is the guy long term, was creeping back in. So to go down with an injury just as the team's finding a stride, and with still everything to play for in that division, and to give yourself a real shot at the playoffs, you've got a feel for him. But I completely agree with Matt. I think this is 2 teams that are just at completely different ends of the NFL spectrum.
Yeah, and that is why I'm locking them up as well. The Seahawks. It's hard not to at this point. It just feels right to see the Seahawks get a win here. I can't see it any other way. So I'm with you as well on that one, Matt. Locking up the Seahawks for sure.
It shows how mad this season is that you've just a different end of the spectrum. Yet the Giants are the ones currently locked into the playoffs. Exactly. That division.
Yeah.
What? It's like the most 2020
That's a brilliant point, actually. Oh god, yeah, that division's going to be talked about for a long time to come. I think this 2020 division is just.
So you don't know what's
going on there. Yeah, the NFC East is just wild turn of events there. But let's shift things on once more, and let's talk about an NFC West matchup between the Rams and the Cardinals. I mean, if only the Cardinals didn't miss that kick last week in the dying seconds, this could be a...
And if my grandmother had wheels, she would be a bike.
But this was a lot closer than that. Because this would be 2 7-4 teams, both in, tied second, I guess you could call it. But this would be a big game in that division. I think it still is. But who do you reckon comes out on top here?
I'm liking the Rams for this one. I think the Cardinals have given a great account of themselves this season, but they've just been a bit inconsistent. There's been a few games where you say, okay, they're legit. And then there's been a few where you're like, bit soon. They need another off-season. They need some more. I think for the most part, it's just get some more pieces on that defense, because you're not going to have Kyler Murray being lights out, him and DeAndre Hopkins going nuts every game. But I think if you get that defense to a point where they don't have to, suddenly contender straight away. So I think I'm going to take the Rams, just better coached. I think they look good. They're a dark horse this season to potentially go all the way with this. As I think the main thing, just as long as Goff can be at least 70% of himself. We see some games where he just doesn't look like he knows what's going on out there. If he can avoid that, just say at least 70% of his ability, I think they've got a shot at going all the way this year.
Yeah, I mean, this... It's hard to... It's hard to argue. The Rams, I still think they're one of the best coached teams in the league. They drop silly games, but you know what? I'm not going to fault them too much for losing against the Niners, who, again, in my opinion, are one of the best coached teams in the league. I mean, that defensive coordinator is probably going to be getting interviewed for a couple of head coaching jobs this year. They've got good players there. It's an in-division game now, and that's the thing that you get with these games is in-division teams, they build to beat each other. Like at the end of the day, each team goes out and the first goal is win the division, because you win the division, you get to playoffs. So you look at a lot of teams and they will build with their main focus just beating the other three teams in their league. So in division wins, losses, I'm not too worried about it as a season as a whole. I just don't think the Rams can. When you look at what the Cardinals. When you look at what the Cardinals do and kind of how they've won some of these games, it's by mad plays from Kyler Murray and big chuck it up to Hopkins. And I just don't think they're going to be able to pull that off against this Rams team, just because you're going to have Aaron Donald coming down the middle and just swallowing Kyler Murray up. Like, Aaron Donald is a freak of nature. It's not going to be easy to do that against him. And this Rams secondary is legit. They don't let up a lot of points. You've got, Jalen Ramsey's maybe looking like he was worth every one of those 2 first-round picks. He really is that good. And the thing to be said about this Rams team, especially if the cap goes down next year, how long is this Rams team going to be anywhere near like this? Because they can't move on from Goff next year. He's a $60 million cap hit next year because of the way his thing. And with the cap going down, there's going to be so many players, so many pieces they're not going to be able to afford. So this might be their last year for 2 or 3 that cap-wise, they're in a spot that they can compete.
Yeah, it's definitely a tricky situation for them to certainly think about overall. But I'm also glad you brought up the defense there. I think this is a big factor for me in this game. I'm a big fan of the Cardinals this year. I think I've said it a couple of times now, and that was my dark horse to go to the Super Bowl. We asked that question a few weeks ago, Sam. But intriguingly, they still have to play the Rams twice. So this is a big indicator for me if they can actually go to the Super Bowl. If they can beat the Rams here, they'll then have a matching record and then, play them in the last game of the season again. Maybe the Cardinals can do it, but for this game, that Rams defense, I think it's just too good for me to not to bet against them. So yeah, I'll be taking the Rams as well for this game, especially at the spread of -1.5. But we have another 9:00 game this week, 9:25 actually. And it sees the Philadelphia Eagles go in to play the Packers. Now,
Right.
2 questions here. How much Carson Wentz will we see, and how much Carson Wentz do we want to see?
We're gonna see too much Carson Wentz. That's all. We're just gonna see too much Carson Wentz. Did you see that play? Did you see that interception he threw in the red zone? Oh my God! There wasn't anyone. That was like a Trubisky level. What? When you're paying a guy as much as you're paying him to do that, and it's not even like we can say the O-line didn't. He was sat untouched, clean in the pocket. He just threw it. Look, this is my lock of the week. Packers at -7 seems like the most surefire, easy bet for me this week. The Eagles are bad. Carson Wentz statistically is one of the worst quarterbacks in the league this year. I think he's got the most interceptions. I think he's got the lowest third down completion percentage. Carson Wentz has flat out been terrible this year, and he's going up against Aaron Rodgers, who for a lot of people is currently the front runner, or if not front runner, close second for MVP. So lock up, not much to say, but how bad is Carson Wentz? Come on.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to debate the result of this. The Packers are going to take it. I think they're a team, they're playing on a different level. Probably looks like a different sport to what we've seen from the Eagles at some point this season. But interesting stat where obviously I'm going to do this every time. My little, not all Carson Wentz's fault of the week. So, most times he's been sacked in his career on a season was last year, 2019, 37 times through 16 games. That's probably going to hurt a little bit. This year, he's currently been sacked 40 times through 10. And I mean, I'm not saying I can't defend that pick, the one that everyone's probably seen going around on Twitter and Instagram and everything like that. He looks lost. I shared a stat with the lads there. I can't remember the exact numbers of it all, but in terms of regression of passer rating, and pretty much everyone else that has regressed in one season as much as him, it's been their last year. It's been the year they've retired, and everyone else is getting around 40 on that list. So it's dreadful. It's not what you expect to see from any franchise QB in the league. I'm not saying it's not his fault. I'm just saying I think it's very easy to throw it all on him, and then also for everyone to say, put in Jalen Hurts. I mean, as a rookie, if you're going to put him out there against this kind of pressure,
yeah,
is he going to do any better? I'm really doubtful. I think there is nothing. It's a revolving door in front of him. And, I mean, yeah, he's made stupid mistakes. But I think this is still a situation. I think we will see Wentz leave. And I think he's going to have success elsewhere in his career. But I think him and Philly, it's headed for divorce. There's something. There's some kind of curse over this Carson Wentz era Eagles team.
I will concede the O-line there is really bad. But, and this is the thing that gets me, is I like comparing Carson Wentz and Jared Goff throughout their career, right? Because they're two very different quarterbacks, but they went 1 and 2, same time. Both have had some bad teams around them, and crucially, both have had bad O-lines after getting paid, right? So, Jared Goff got paid big money, and because he got paid big money, that team that went to the Super Bowl, they crucially had to let go a couple of the members of that O-line that was one of the most crucial parts for them getting to the Super Bowl. Now, the Rams came back the next year, and they didn't go back to the Super Bowl. In fact, I'm not even sure they made the playoffs, did they? They narrowly missed out. And Jared Goff regressed. But he didn't fall off a cliff in the same way that Carson Wentz is just fallen off a cliff. Like, Jared Goff went from being a potential MVP guy, and he was throwing a lot of yards. They were a great offense, and he went down to being what I think most people probably consider Jared Goff as, which is probably a middle of the pack quarterback who, on his day, can play at an elite level, but tends towards an average kind of is good enough to get a job done. Now, for what Carson Wentz has done, that fall apart when you compound the fact that he gets paid outrageous amounts of money, I think it will be very hard for a team that doesn't have the right pieces to invest in him. So he's very much going to be a guy who needs the right spot. Which brings me on to a question for you guys, especially you, Matt, because I know you do think he's going to go somewhere. Where would you like to see him go?
I love that as a question.
James got a bold one. I have a bold one here.
Here we go.
Maybe he stays in division. Now, this is based around the fact that there's going to be no love lost if he leaves Philadelphia from either party. Because at the end of the day, which quarterback has a statue outside the stadium? It's Nick Foles. It's not Carson Wentz. Are they fully bought on him? So is he seen that, and is he not fully bought in Philadelphia? And does he want to have some revenge? At which point, there's two teams in the NFC East who could take him, but one I think is more likely, and that is the Washington football team.
Yeah.
And I think that could be a place where Carson Wentz could have a lot of success.
Interesting.
So, there's one team that jumps out for me, and I don't know. It's one that to me could end up being a slightly terrifying prospect, and that's the Patriots. They're a team that need a quarterback. Bill Belichick is a guy who's not afraid to take. I mean, he takes guys. What's the meme? He takes like receivers from Walmart and turns them into a Pro Bowler. Like, little rebuild there for him. Cam Newton's obviously not going to be it. Get back to a guy that's a bit more similar to what they had with Brady, where they can maybe try and bring him more towards that scheme. Somewhere they're going to need one. They don't like Stidham. They're not going to be drafted in a spot to get an elite quarterback coming out in the draft. Maybe that's a little option for him. I think that could be a scary
I like
thought.
that. I like those. I especially like the Washington one just because I think that would be that'd be electric to see him have to go into Philly again as a Washington football team player, just to see how much abuse he'd get. Now, the one I wanted to throw at you guys, because I think this one is actually quite scary, and I think this would be the best for Wentz's career, because we've seen what Wentz can do behind a good O-line with good pieces around him. So I'm thinking, what if the Indianapolis Colts take a gamble on him and they try and... They've got the best O-line in football. They've got a great stable of running backs. They've got good young wide receivers. They've got a great defense. If you can pick up a guy and you can get someone of Wentz's potential caliber relatively cheap, and you can get him to 2/3 of what he was playing at in his MVP year, maybe that's something they look into.
That would spice up that division.
Dangerous.
AFC South would just become wild. God, you'd love to see that, wouldn't you?
Very quick fourth team. What about the Bears? Give the defense something to actually lean on the offensive side of the ball. I mean, the O-line's not a ton better, so maybe you have... I mean, it's still... I mean, no, it's a lot better because it's the Eagles' O-line's dreadful, but it's not exactly a great O-line. But I don't think he needs great. He just needs an O-line that looks like it's got 5 guys out there, not 3.
Can he be...
Bears could be interesting.
Reunite him with Matt Nagy as well.
Cool.
I think what we've realised, there's a lot of options for him, potentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe Carson Wentz isn't done?
No, he's not.
He's not done. He's not done.
I looked up a quick stat on your Jared Goff point. He's already, this season, at 7 sacks. He's had more than Goff's worst season of 33. And that's with 6 less games played. So I can't wait to see what the stat ends up being at the end of it, because I think it's going to put a lot of things into context. But we'll see where he ends up eventually.
Yeah, he's still got time, and he's still got time to correct it and win a Super Bowl ring on his own accord, rather than having a second quarterback steal the limelight and get the statue, which I still think is quite harsh on him when you think about it. But let's get back to the matchups, and let's move on to one of the teams you just mentioned there, Matt. Actually, the Patriots going in to play the Chargers. The Chargers, they keep losing close matchups. Could we potentially see the same thing happen here, and the Patriots just pip them?
I'm starting to think maybe this Patriots team just kind of play up at the right times. But then you put them in a game they should win, and they play down, almost like the Steelers, just with a lot less talent, and without sort of the monster defense to get them through it. They just seem to play to the opposition, which makes this a really weird game to call, because at points the Chargers look good, and they can put up points, but then they just can't seem to win, unless it's against like the Jets recently. But like they just can't seem to get over that finish line. There's always something that comes up, whether it's just Herbert having a bit of a rookie moment, whether it's them just not getting the right feet in the end zone, a call against them, a kick, whatever. They just can't quite get it done. So I think I'm going to lean and say that the Patriots take this. But it really depends, I think, on one, Cam Newton. Like, which Cam do we see? And then again, do we see Herbert make any little rookie errors? Does he manage to go 3 touchdowns, 1 pick? Or does it end up being more towards a 3-2, 2-2 kind of game? So I think I'm going to lean on the Patriots. I'm not betting on it at all. But don't really like this one.
Cam at the weekend had statistically one of his poorer games since joining the Patriots, right? And they still won, and they won, to me, they were the better team out there, right? Mm-hmm. Now I think that's because this Belichick defense is picking up. It's starting to play better football. I mean, Stephon Gilmore, they held D-Hop pretty well, right?
Yeah.
And Gilmore's playing better. No, he's not playing at the level he played last year, but I mean, he's still playing better. And the thing for me with this game, which is why I'm going to agree with Matt and say the Patriots taking this, I'm really happy taking them at +2.5 as well, is just at this point of the season, what have the Chargers got to play for? Nothing. I mean, they're playing for pride, effectively. Like, they're not going to make the playoffs. They're not going to get the number 1 overall pick. I mean, and if they were, maybe they're tanking. But there's no reason for them. They've got their quarterback. So they're in this limbo. It's like, right, we'd clock off until next year. The Patriots they're still in the hunt. There's still a sniff that if they win out, they could scrape a playoff berth. So I think there's just the chance that the Patriots come. They always play their best football in December. And we're in December now.
True.
So Patriots, I'm taking this.
Yeah, it's hard to disagree with that. The magic of Bill Belichick always comes alive at this point of the year.
Yep.
Maybe he's Father Christmas. Who knows? It does feel like it at times.
Yeah.
Put that in the title. Is Bill Belichick Father Christmas?
Done my job for me,
I mean, it's just hard to bet against them at this point of the year. And the Chargers, they keep losing these games, these close matchups. At some point, you feel like they could turn one over. But we said that so many times this year that I just don't see it happening from here on out. So, yeah, I'm happy to take the Patriots as well, especially at plus 2.5 on the spread. But we do have a Sunday night football game between the Broncos and the Chiefs. The Broncos are going to have an actual quarterback this week.
That'll help.
Which is, yeah.
Always a good thing to tick off the list early in the week. Yep, actual quarterback. Lovely.
Yeah, it's rather than the lad who played last week, whose name has just evaded me, who, got to give him some credit.
Yeah.
That's a hard situation to be in.
I'd like to see a lot of people try and go out there and do better from that situation. The fact that 48 hours before he was just didn't even think he'd be suiting up, let alone a quarterback. Like, fair play to the lad.
Yeah.
Gave it a shot.
Yeah. The way in which as well. So he dropped back for 9 passes. And he was slinging it he was getting battered when he did drop back, and he'd still throw the ball and sling it, and he was effectively going out there going, what's the worst that can happen, and having a good time. So, yeah, props to Kendall Hilton.
Kendall Hinton, that's the
Hinton,
name.
Sorry.
Hinton. Don't disrespect the man.
Kendall Hinton, but preps to him. But I mean, did you guys see Dan Orlovsky's rant about the quarterbacks? That it's like Good Morning America or something, and he just went in, and I found it really interesting. He was saying just how irresponsible of his quarterbacks to be in their room, in that building, not wearing the masks and putting themselves in that situation. Like, if they'd have just had masks on, then this wouldn't have been an issue. They'd have been allowed to play. It was because there was video footage of them in the room with each other, not with masks on. Yeah. At which point you're sat there going, how much do you guys between you get paid to just wear your mask when you have to? Like, forget about whether you want to or not. This is your job. I'm paying you to do this. Like,
completely agree.
Yeah.
And I think one player, obviously, Drew Lock hasn't exactly played like a franchise guy. And we're starting to maybe see, and then the next thing, okay, so he's not even going to be, you'd expect your franchise quarterback, you put even maybe a bit younger with Peyton Manning in that room, he's probably saying, why are we not wearing masks here? Like, what's going on? If you're not going to step up and be a leader within that room, how are you going to lead your team? And it's not like he's doing it on the field either. So, I mean, if I was Drew Lock, I'm thinking I've got to come out and look incredible consistently now for the next few years. But I think, getting it to this game specifically, I think, is anyone really debating what's going to happen? I think the Chiefs are going to roll this. I mean, I think one thing we learned, and it was fun to watch for me for that first quarter of that game, never leave Tyreek Hill in single coverage and give him that 15 clear yards to just run and set up his route at the start of a play. Never do that. Anyone. Ever again. Like, I was just watching it going, like, even I can see it. I'm not really a defensive guy. I just like offensive football. And I was like, if I can figure it out, like, come on, Tom Bowles. Like, come on. But yeah, Chiefs look great. I mean, we nearly pulled it back. Like, we put it up more of a game, but I mean, the Chiefs just did what they need to do. And I think it's one of those games you say that Mahomes probably, if he needed to, probably could have put up enough to keep that game as a win when they're up that much. This game is going to be an easier game for them. They roll on, they keep it moving, and they keep essentially setting up that big clash with the Steelers. Which
completely agree. Completely agree. And what the Chiefs are doing here, I think, is really impressive. They came into the season as kind of being heralded as the next big thing, and they've come in and they've just have not disappointed. Everyone's got multiple years now of tape on Mahomes and on Tyreek Hill and on all of those weapons. Like, everyone knows what the Chiefs are going to do. They're going to play great offense. Their defense isn't insanely good, but it's good enough. It's just no one's got an answer for it. And it's not like it's, the first year of them doing this or something. They've been doing this for 3 years now. And what they're doing is so impressive. And you've got, 2 of the 3 league leaders in passing yards are Chiefs. And one of them's a tight end. Like, they are so good. They're so stacked at every position. It's really incredible, really impressive to watch, and I cannot wait to see them in the playoffs going up against the Steelers.
It's just such a great matchup, isn't it? Big, like best defense, best offense. It's just like, it's gonna be incredible.
Yeah. It's gonna be brilliant to watch. Can't wait for that.
I hope it's snowing at Arrowhead, and it's just a brutal game of football.
Good lord, that would be I don't know. I'd rather it not be snowing.
Just I want good conditions. I want no excuses. I want just straight up football. Go out there, better team.
900 yards passing between the two quarterbacks.
Football. That's all we want to see. But let's move things on to a team we just mentioned actually, and it's the first of the rearranged fixtures as a result of the Ravens' COVID outbreak, and it sees the Washington football team go into Pittsburgh to play the Steelers. Do you guys think that this schedule being messed around for the Steelers, then playing a slightly shorter week and a bit all up in the air, will affect them in this game, or do you reckon they'll continue through, be what probably will be 12-0, but they still have to play week 12, so it's a bit confusing at this point, but probably 12-0.
I'm not sure it will mess them up. I think they're two soundly coached. This is a good organisation that deals well with these things, and the thing is, the Washington football team is not a massive obstacle, realistically. This should be a relatively easy game. Obviously, this depends. Now, if they go out and they get beaten by the Ravens, then maybe that wobbles them, because they've still the Ravens game to play, right? So, yeah. I mean, effectively everything we're saying does depend on that game, because if they get beat by the Ravens and then they've got a really short week and then they've got to go and play the football team who've had a much longer week, much more time to prepare, obviously with the Washington football team also playing on Thanksgiving, so they'll have had a really long week if this game gets postponed. So, it will be against them, but I think the Steelers are good enough to just grind out the win. I don't like the spread though at 10.5. That seems awfully high for a game that has got so many variables on at the moment and so many things that could happen.
For me, this is a really tough one. I think Washington having so long to sit and wait for this game could hinder them a little bit. I think sometimes when you've got such a long time between games, kind of get out of it a bit, especially where, albeit that division is all to play for. It's not like they're a good team kind of hunting down a division. It sort of just seems like who can accidentally fall over the finish line first and end up in the playoffs. So I think from that point of view, I don't like them having this long between games. I think for me as well, I think the Steelers, if they come off of it with a loss, if that loss happens against the Ravens, I think they're only going to have, I think they could go unbeaten, but I think there's only going to be one loss if they do have one. And I think Washington's best hope, they want the Steelers to get another win. Get a few more of them thinking, oh, we could do this. They struggled against the Cowboys. They played down to teams. I think I'd take Washington over the Cowboys as just being potentially a team that could come out and stop this, especially the version of the Cowboys it was. So there's part of me that thinks this is a potential trap game, but the Steelers are going to have enough to get through. I just think there's not going to be quite enough from this Washington offense to get it done. Yeah. I think it'll be a close game. I'm not going near that spread. I'll moneyline the Steelers, and that's about it. But I think it could be another one where you look at the Steelers and go, it's not a lock-up for them to go all the way this year. There's holes, there's gaps, but just because they're playing down. And I think it's one of the teams that then when you put them in against the Chiefs, all of those will sort of disappear and you'll go, oh, this team can really, really play. Now I see why they're unbeaten. Just because they played to their opponent.
Yeah, I mean, I feel it'll be 11-0 going to this game. I feel like they will be the Ravens tomorrow night. That's a conversation we had last week. Because the Steelers my lock of the week last week? I can't remember exactly, but but I feel that'll be 11-0.
Yeah, they were, because I actually locked the Ravens. But
there you go. We'll see what happens there. But I think the Steelers will be 11-0 going into this game. And I do agree with you, Matt. This could be a trap game. But even a trap game for the Steelers, I'm not concerned about. They're just that good at playing football. So, 12-0 Steelers going into week 14 is what I can envision happening for sure. And then we have the penultimate game, which sees the Bills go in to play the 49ers. The 49ers continuing to get healthy. Again, getting a few pieces back and starting to put things together. Do you reckon they can stand a chance as a result of this, playing against the Bills?
Personally, I don't. I think I kind of alluded to earlier when was chatting kind of about how divisional teams kind of play differently against each other. They're designed like the Niners beating the Rams. Yes, it's a good win, and yes, it's an easy win, and yes, they're getting slightly more healthy. But I still think, beating the Rams, the Niners coaching staff will have spent so much more time watching Rams film than they'll have watched a Bills film. They just will, because they face them twice a year, and it's a divisional game, and there's all that around it. So I'm quite comfortable taking the Bills. I think they are the better team. That being said, the Niners defense is still well coached, and Josh Allen just makes me nervous every time I come out on the pod and I say I'm confident in the Bills. There's a little bit of me that just goes, but am I confident in Josh Allen, and will he actually do it? Do you know what I mean?
I think we've seen two different versions of this Bills team and a Niners team that is just desperately trying to get healthy and is now finally there. The point of game film, I think, where they're in a division against, obviously, Kyler Murray, Russell Wilson, they spend twice as much time watching that game film as the Rams. And Josh Allen is of that ilk. And I think this offense, there are similarities between all three of those offenses to varying degrees, just based on the niches of each one. But it's not as much of a jump as other teams in the league would be. So I
hadn't thought that.
I think the Niners actually can't give a great account, and I'm actually going to predict them to get the win here. I think this is a team that is feeling just a bit pissed off at what's happened to them this season, that they've had more of that window stolen. And that win against the Rams is huge to make them think, right, we're not just limping to the end of this season and moving on. Obviously, we're not going anywhere. It's just a tough division anyway, especially with what they've dealt with. But they go, you know what, we're just going to take as many heads on the way as we can, and we're going to remind people we're a force, and when everyone's healthy next year, we're coming right back for it. And the Bills, on the other hand, are just trying to stay clear of Miami. I think they're a team playing which they're looking over their shoulder half the time, and they've been inconsistent this year, and I think the Niners take it.
Yeah, I think that's what it comes down to, isn't it? The consistency of this Buffalo team makes people like us quite nervous to back them. And I think what forms my opinion here is the injuries, like you say, Matt. I mean, the 49ers, one of two teams, including the Eagles, who have just been plagued by injuries this year. So I think getting some of these pieces back for this game can really, really help them out. And that sort of leads me to believe that the 49ers will get it done. And you know what? They're also underdogs, right? Minus plus 2.5. So I'll be happy to take them on that spread. Yeah, it's a small spread, granted, but I think it's worthwhile taking at this point in time. But to finish things off, we have one more game to talk about. Now, this game could be played on Wednesday, I think it is, or Tuesday. Could be played on Thursday. Could be played next year. Who knows? It's going to keep on moving potentially. Depending on Ravens' COVID outbreak. So hopefully they've got it figured out and it'll get played when it's scheduled to be played. But the Ravens are going to have a lot more starters back for this game.
Yeah.
But the Cowboys, have a bit more time off to think about what's going on here. Do you reckon they can capitalise on this and beat the Ravens?
So, I've just seen, I don't know the exact names, but 4 Ravens players coming off the COVID list. So they're already starting to clear it, already starting to get back. So, I think, by this time we get to this game, it's going to be, not forgotten, but they're going to be pretty well clear of it. They might not have had a ton of time to practice, but you're not going to be just seeing holes all over this team.
Yeah.
And this Cowboys team, it looked like, and Dalton first came back in like, right, they're going to get this together. We're going to start to see the Cowboys actually be able to move the ball, and maybe they're the team to beat in this division suddenly. And then Thanksgiving, it was like, oh, maybe not at all. And I think if you're a team that can't play at your best when you need to in division on your traditional Thanksgiving game, are you going to be able to against a team like the Ravens? Probably not. And I think their prep's all been affected. Like the way you have it with everything like sports nutrition, and the way these guys are going to be training all week is to go at that dead on certain time. And the more that gets moved, the Ravens are going to be gradually getting used to that, I think, and they're not having to try and adjust everything within their building. They're just going to be doing everything from home, so they can be a bit more liberal with it. Whereas this Cowboys team, schedule keeps getting darted about for no fault of their own. There's going to be frustration with them. And I think they're going to start to just be like, already a tough season. It's just not our year. And I think heads go down maybe. Whereas the Ravens are like, right, we're almost enemy number 1 within the league right now. We got to make this count for something, because if we also miss the playoffs after this, we're going to be a laughingstock. Yeah, so I think the psychological for me, they win. And the fact they're a better football team, they win.
Yeah.
I think that if we miss the playoffs thing is the crux with this game, because if the Ravens lose against the Steelers, with the Steelers in division and the Browns in division, they are going to be in a spot that they're going to be expected and maybe even need to win out in order to make the playoffs. And how embarrassing would it be for the Ravens after you've had a Lamar Jackson MVP year where you get blown out in your playoff game, and then you come back and you're supposed to be the team to beat, and you actually are just a bit meh all year, and then you don't even make the playoffs. So the Ravens are going to have to win this game. I think there's a very good chance they will be in a must-win kind of spot, and they are the better team, so I think they will win the game. The scenario in which I see the Cowboys having a shot is if, for whatever reason, there's more COVID issues, or because of the postponements and stuff, something happens with the Ravens, and the Ravens just fall apart and can't do anything. Do you know what I mean? The Ravens come out and they put up 3 offensive yards in the first half just because something has gone so terribly wrong through lack of practice and stuff like that. Now, I don't think that's going to happen, but that's kind of my reasoning behind, I suppose it could, given how wild everything that's going on in the league at the moment is, especially with the COVID situation. There is that possibility, but I'm with you on that, Matt. I think the Ravens are going to take this comfortably, although I'm not so happy with the 6.5 spread.
Yeah, I think you guys are right. On paper, this should be a Ravens lock-up. With no COVID issues, I don't think anyone could argue against that. I think you got a spot on when you said about it being a must-win game. I think if the Ravens lose this game, then chance of getting playoffs, it's too slim. The Browns have pretty much got that point. But it's still question marks around the COVID situation. I know I've mentioned it a few times this episode, but it's a moving situation. So I'm staying away from betting on this game as it stands. The spread's going to fluctuate throughout the week or up until game time. So perhaps on game day morning, I'll take a look and make my decision then. But yeah, it's too tough to call with all the situation that's going ahead and potential more cases and whatnot.
Who knows if it's even played this week?
I mean, the Steelers-Ravens game might get played tomorrow. Then when does that get pushed back to? There's too many if buts and maybes.
Well, I just want it to be played tomorrow because it means that we can watch some football after work.
I think it can't. Surely it can't be pushed past tomorrow, because then you're quite literally pushing it into
then
Thursday
you're
night
week
18.
Football. Then it's week 18 and postponing of everything. I think.
Still think forfeit, but maybe I'm just harsh on others. I think.
No, as a Ravens fan, I do not want to see a forfeit. We need to compete. We need that win, which I don't think is coming, if I'm honest, tomorrow. But we need a win. We need to get our season back on track and at least try and make the playoffs, because it's looking a bit ropey down in Baltimore at the moment. However, that is all the games covered for Week 13. We've done it again, boys. Put another shift and covered every single matchup.
What a time to be alive.
So unless you boys have any other points to raise, unfortunately, that is all we've got time for this week. So as ever, be sure to head over to YouTube, go like, comment, and subscribe. Be sure to turn on the notification bell as well. It will let you know when we've posted out an episode. Make sure you do that. Please do that. We beg you to do that.
Please watch our content. Please listen to our content.
And also head over to Instagram and Twitter. We're at the Brit Iron. Go get involved with the conversation on both of those platforms. But for now, thank you for listening, and we'll catch you next time.
See ya.